Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at a Strength Faith build, and instead of just focusing on one build, we're actually going to run through 5 different setups that you can use with this build. So we'll go through these one by one, taking a look at them, and then seeing how they do in the arena. You can use this for PvE if you want to, however they are set up a little bit more for PvP. Alright, so this build is going to be at level 125, and I'll just briefly go through the base allocations of stats as well as setup that can be used for all the different weapon combinations, and then we'll go into more detail as we move through the video. So we have the Imp Wolf Head along with the Tree Sentinel Armor, Lionel's Gauntlets, and Lionel's Greaves to hit 109 poise, which is a very important poise breakpoint here. We also do get a little bit more endurance with the Imp Head, and then we will be running 20 Faith, 20 Dexterity, and 45 Strength. And those are going to be helpful numbers to kind of hit all the different stats that we're looking for the different weapons we're going to be using. But if we want to use the Great Bow, that's kind of where the dexterity stat comes in. And you can definitely min-max this more or less depending on which setup you're going to stick with. If you know you're not going to be using the Great Bow or something that requires 20 dex, it might make more sense to put those points into something like Faith or Strength and to just min-max a little bit more. But this is what I liked at level 125, and it really just gave me a whole bunch of variety that I was very, very happy with. So that's going to be kind of the base layout. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, as always, I definitely would appreciate it. I'm very excited for the DLC coming out pretty soon, so be on the lookout for more videos related to that. And also, if you like this style of video, definitely let me know in the comments. But yeah, let's go ahead and break down the first setup. So the first setup we're going to be running is probably one that looks familiar, and that's going to be Haldag, but instead we're going to be doing this a little bit differently because we've got the dagger in our main hand, and that gives us access to the unique R2 with the Erdsteel dagger. I do definitely recommend buffing this with Sacred Blade. We have that buff on both of our weapons here, since that is the default Ash of War for the Erdsteel dagger, and I really like going for the running heavy as well as the jumping heavy and just the uncharged heavy. All 3 of those attacks have very good poise damage or are guaranteed poise breaks. The jumping heavy and the uncharged heavy will poise break. And then you also have just this nice option in your offhand, so you can kind of go for these combinations of heavy attacks followed up by the halberd in your offhand and just do a lot of vortexing and really just have a nice time. So let's go ahead and see how that performs in the arena. Our first opponent here is going to be running a greatsword, so we're going to be needing to play around their hyper armor. That's going to be our main concern, especially since they're two-handing their weapon. So basically we want to either get in very quick hits, which we do have the option to do with the dagger, and kind of get in, get out, or go for attacks that will break the hyper armor. So we can see their Sacred Blade does the trick. We'll also be thinking about potentially going for jumping heavy attacks, which will also do it, and maybe getting in some uncharged heavy attacks as well with the Erdsteel dagger. And then if we can space appropriately, we will be going for attacks with our offhand halberd. That's going to be a nice way to go for a whiff punish if they are just out of reach with one of their KGS attacks. So we're just kind of spacing, backing up a little bit. We get our second Sacred Blade to connect, and then here we haven't really been spammy at all with our dagger, but they're low on health and rolling in, so we are going to punish that with a little bit of dagger spam. Next up we have a player running Rusted Anchors, and this just screams I'm going to jump attack you, so I go ahead and get the anti-air with Sacred Blade, and we're actually going to be two-handing the Erdsteel dagger here. It's unclear how much poise they're running, but the two-handed dagger can kind of bully low poise players, so they do go for that hyper armor with Sword Dance, but we are able to get in just a bunch of quick hits, especially with the quickness of the heavy attack. It's just very, very nice. So moving on, we do have a player again running the greatsword setup we saw earlier. This is a different greatsword though, so they don't have access to the true combos that the KGS has. We're able to interrupt their Flaming Strike with a jumping heavy attack on the Erdsteel dagger, and then get in some quick hits with the heavy attack with the Erdsteel dagger as well. We are running Millicent's Prosthesis here, so it's important to note that successive attack bonuses can be quite strong with the multi-hits that come with the Erdsteel dagger and just the nice vortexing potential. And they do get a nice amount of damage off on us, but we're able to roll in and grab a backstab, and then we just kind of back up, reset back to neutral, see what they're going to do. They're very low on health, so we know we can get in some quick hits or just go for a punish with the halberd and finish off that player. Now, moving on, we have somebody running Rivers of Blood at home, basically, which is a Nagakiba with Blood Flame Blade applied to it, and they do have Double Slash as their Ash of War, so it very much plays similarly, but it's not Rivers of Blood. We get our buffs off for both of our weapons here, so we are going to be hitting a bit harder, which is pretty nice because the Urge Steel Dagger one-handed does get an A in strength scaling, so one-handed is not quite as powerful as two-handed. So all the buffs we can get are going to be quite helpful for this. We're just kind of spacing and trying to get in chip damage where we can, going for some jumping attacks. We do have some nice vortex potential here, just because they aren't running something with insane hyper armor, but instead we end up getting a roll-in backstab and finishing off the player. Alright, so next up we have the red-headed stepchild of the Beastmaster build, and this is going to be the Bonk Master. So here we do have two different bonking weapons, which is going to be a lot of fun to play with, and they both have super high damage Ashes of War. So for this I'm definitely going to recommend using probably these two talismans. The Shard of Alexander and the Claw Talisman would be the best option, since jumping attacks are pretty good, and the Ashes of War are super strong for this build. So they both come out fairly delayed, but if your opponent isn't expecting them, or they're just trying to mash into them, they have great hyper armor, so both those things make these fairly viable and definitely a lot of fun to use in the arena or in invasion. So you also have some nice synergy where you have the offhand option. You get great poise and hyper armor when you have the two-handed option, which I definitely recommend incorporating into your playstyle. So, you know, going for crouching attacks and switching over to the power stance moveset, and then going for the offhand, followed up by the light attack with the main hand. It just kind of keeps your opponent guessing, and can kind of make this slightly slower option a little bit more unpredictable. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how this performs in the arena. Our first opponent with this setup is going to be running Power Stance Vikes. I accidentally thought they were Partisans at the beginning of this duel, so it's a little bit concerned that they are running PS Spears, but PS Vikes is also pretty scary. Now we are able to catch them as they run away with our Ash of War, so we can just see that players might not be accustomed to the timing of this Ash of War, since it is probably somewhat underutilized in the arena, and we get just a ton of damage there. And as they go for their Ash of War, we're able to roll in. We're not set up for a backstab by positioning standards, but we are able to use the massive hyper armor to get Marika's Hammer Ash of War off and finish off that player. Next up, we're going to have a bit of a redemption arc here. So this was definitely a good player here. They had some nice mix-ups, some nice weapon swaps, and just utilizing some moves that you don't see a ton. So they swap between a whip over to power stance thrusting swords, and then over to a curved greatsword, and just use a variety of hard-hitting Ashes of War. So we're already pretty low on health. We didn't do a great job of avoiding the follow-up R2 with the whip. We do get a decent amount of damage in with our Ash of War, but we don't really appreciate just kind of the variety that they have too much. So we end up getting hit a number of times going for Marika's Hammer Ash of War, probably not the play, and then our opponent does a great job of just vortexing us with some CGS attacks. So they go for a nice bow at the end there, and we follow it up with our round 2 redemption arc attempt. So they pull out the whip to start with again. They go for Flaming Strike on a thrusting sword, and then immediately swap over to CGS, and they just kind of keep swinging. So really you do need to respect that hyper armor, and you can't jump in and try to punish. They go for a different Ash of War on a different thrusting sword, and here we do land our Ash of War again as they try to roll away. So we do have the health advantage here. They go for a number of attacks with the power stance thrusting swords, which we very much need to respect, that you can kind of get caught in that. So two-handing the Great Hammer wouldn't be a bad move to just kind of shut all of that down, but we are able to connect a crouching attack for the finish. Alright, so this next one is probably one of the goofiest of the mix we have here today, but I wanted to include it because I thought it was just kind of a fun, just kind of off-meta way to play the game. So we have this setup of a spear in your offhand and a greatsword in your main hand. I'm calling this Ordovis's Gerundal because you do have the Inquisitor's Gerundal, which is just kind of a funny weapon that you don't really see a lot. And both these are uniquely Ash of War, so you have Charge Forth on your Gerundal, which you can charge up if you want a bigger running start, and then you have one of the best Ashes of Wars to just deal with spam or multiple opponents, and that's going to be Ordovis's Vortex. So that just does so much damage, and it's a lot of fun to use. So that's going to be great. Again, you have the option to two-hand your weapon if you want some of that extra hyper armor, and just a really solid moveset with this weapon, and it hits quite hard. So I had a lot of fun with this, and let's go ahead and see how it performs in the arena. Our first opponent with this setup is going to be another greatsword user, so this is still patch 1.10, so the hyper armor enjoyers are still out in droves, just enjoying the greatswords, which I am also using a greatsword, but I am one-handing it some of the time. So yeah, we're taking a look at a player using Flaming Strike. We definitely don't want to roll in like we did at the beginning of this fight. They're doing a good job of just kind of keeping their movement unpredictable with their jumps, trying to set up true combos if possible, and they do get a nice running attack that always has more range than I think it should, and I always try to space it and I always get hit. So pro tip to just make sure that you do roll those running attacks. They will oftentimes catch you, but we are able to finish off that opponent and move on to the next one. So this player is running the dreaded Power Stance Straight Swords. So they're not as scary as they once were, but they still can do massive amounts of damage, especially if you get your chains going. So 2 L1s followed up by Sword Dance, which they do have, can really just delete most of your health. So I'm trying to be cognizant of that and really just kind of play kind of patiently, find opportunities where I can. I see that they like to bait attacks and then go for Sword Dance, so I'm kind of keeping a mental note of that. And then since I don't have the hyper armor that comes with the two-handed moveset for most of this duel, I do periodically throw out the Ordovis's Vortex, which does have crazy hyper armor, so that kind of fills in that gap for me, which is pretty nice. Great swords against Power Stance Straight Swords are not too bad of a matchup, just because you do have access to a light attack which can anti-air your opponent, so that can be really nice to just kind of catch them out of their jumping attacks, which are very common with the Power Stance Straight Swords, or just trade into them and kind of continue mashing, which is a strong option as well. We do switch over to the two-handed moveset and then finish our opponent, and now we have another go with the player from the beginning, who is running that KGS with Flaming Strike, and we're just trying to back off a little bit. We're not running in. We see that they like it. So we go for one of those who does that moments where we use the charge forth on the two-handed moveset of the Inquisitor's Gerundal. So we're having a good time, just trying some things, seeing if we can make them work, and when they do, it's a lot of fun. So we do get that to connect for all of the hits, which is pretty nice. Charge forth is definitely better than it once was in previous patches, since you do get poise breaks with some of the early hits, whereas you used to not be able to manage that. We do switch over to the two-handed moveset just for the finish. A lot of times if you have a massive health advantage, you can go for just a trade with a greatsword and it just works out. And we go for the follow-up heavy attack and actually get the finish with that. So a nice kind of unpredictable move there. We can move on to Qatar of Celeria. This is going to be a slightly more meta version of some of the other builds we've seen. So this is going to be the closest to a Haldag setup or a Halfist setup. And we're going to have an offhand Qatar as well as a main hand Celeria's Tree. And this is going to be a pretty nice setup. I like it a lot because you have the option to use this Ash of War that has pretty nice AoE, and if you get a fully charged one while you have some of your blue flask, you will be able to go for a projectile version of this. So pretty nice option to just have for invasions or in duels, and then just the vortex potential with kind of the flowcharty nature of the main hand spear with the offhand fist is really nice. You get poise breaks in both kind of hits, and you also do get some nice hyper armor with the great spear. So I definitely recommend this one. The spear talisman and probably the claw talisman are going to be the way to go. If you think you're going to be going for a lot of vortexes, you might want to be going for Millicent's prosthesis just to get the successive attack bonus between these two weapons, but overall very enjoyable setup with a lot of good synergy and a lot of good options, especially you do have the two-handed moveset of the guitar. I put Golden Vow on this just as a way to buff my setup a little bit at the beginning, and then if I'm going for chase downs or something, this is super strong, and there's a true combo with the running heavy into follow-up heavy. It's somewhat difficult to land in duels, but I would say in invasions, it's definitely something you can just deliver a ton of damage with. So overall, probably one of my favorite builds in the mix, but the last build is definitely my favorite. Alright, so once again we'll be up against a player running the dreaded Power Stance Straight Swords, and this time they are going to be bleed infused, so we will need to make sure that we don't get bled here, since that will do quite a bit of damage. And we're able to get in a couple quick hits, trying to get them in a nice vortex. We miss most of our hits with the offhand, but do manage to get most of our hits with the Great Spear, so we are, building up that health advantage here. We do come in for a little bit of a trade. They do get a lot of phantom hits in, so we go ahead and Bolus, and we're just going to swap our talismans here since we have taken a little bit of damage, and now it is nice to get some of those extra damage buffs from those talismans. We are again playing pretty patiently here. The just ability to vortex us or just get off so much damage so fast, especially with bleed Power Stance Straight Swords, is just quite substantial. So it's going to make sense for us to play kind of patiently. We know that they are always ready to go for a whip punish on us, so we need to be kind of a little bit patient, and here they start getting in some of those very fast attacks. They aren't going for as many L1s as I was expecting, and we actually do manage to roll the bleed proc, so that was a pretty nice moment there where we just avoid taking a whole bunch of damage and manage to stay alive. And then here we interrupt the second half of their running L1 with a crouching attack. Just the range on Soluria's tree is quite nice, and we're periodically pulling out the guitars because those can be a really nice way to pressure an opponent with low health, but we don't want to stay too predictable, so we switch back to the tree and we manage to interrupt their Reduvia attack and get the finish. And yeah, I think they maybe assumed we had higher blood loss. One of those hits, if it had bled us, would have done the trick, but we had pretty low blood loss. So moving on, we have a player that's running Power Stance Magma Curve Swords, which is definitely not a setup you see too often. Power Stance Curve Swords are pretty decent, honestly, in this patch. I feel like you could see them more. I like running Power Stance Shamshir and just switching between the two-handed and the Power Stance moveset, but I would not really say the Magma Curve Swords are the play. However, they do have a great Ash of War with the just kind of spinning slash with magma version. So they go for some running attacks, which are pretty easy to reaction roll, so we go ahead and back off. We're trying to get in our last bit of damage. They don't go for the full Ash of War. I think that would have been the play there. Maybe they were out of stamina, but we're able to switch over to the Power Stance guitars and just go for a running light attack for the finish. It does come out quite quickly, so it's going to be a nice way to get that extra damage in. Now, we have a player that's running Power Stance Great Hammers, and that's kind of scary. They can do a lot of damage very fast. They do also have Relates Charge. With this particular Great Hammer, they're able to recover a little bit of HP if they get successive attacks. So we do manage to just kind of strafe around them and get that backstab, which I was pretty happy about, even though we took some damage in the process, and now they're very low on health, and we can finish them off with a guitar. So we can see swapping between the two-handed moveset for the guitar being quite helpful. Alright, so this one I'm affectionately calling the Bubble Boy Wonder, and that's because we have access to one of the most fun Ashes of War in the game, and that's going to be a Bubble Shower. So we can go ahead and go for this very slow, big area of effect Ash of War, and sometimes it'll work out. So I like using it as a wake-up. We'll see in the duels how successful or unsuccessful I am with landing it, but what I really like about this is you do have access to some really nice incantations in your offhand. So we'll be using the Clawmark Seal. I will use Stone of Garank to oftentimes get a true combo where you land the stone and then follow it up with a light attack with the big bubble horn here. So I really like that. The kind of poise damage that comes with the stone is massive, as well as the length of time that they're in the poise break animation. So sets up nice combos there. You can do a ton of damage if you get it to hit, and we'll see how that works out in the arena. We have a number of duels for this just because I like this build so much, so if you want to stick with me to the end, I would appreciate it. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how it works. Our first opponent here has Power Stance Great Spears with the dual lance setup, and they've got the gold emblem, so we know that they're probably pretty proficient with them. We come in and grab a nice jumping attack and get a decent amount of damage, and we do have Catch Flame in our offhand. They are going for the quick poke, so we need to be just kind of conscientious of that, and we're going to try to mix things up periodically, switch over to the two-handed moveset just to kind of interrupt their idea of how we're going to play. I think switching between the timing of the one-handed moveset and the two-handed moveset can be very, very powerful, and here we are able to follow it up with the Catch Flame for the finish and make pretty quick work out of a very strong setup. Now, next up we have a player running Power Stance Katanas, and I'm not really sure what they're doing. They kind of chill at the beginning, but it's a good opportunity for us to get off Stone of Garang. And then as they match with their Ash of War, we go ahead and match with ours, and that's a great way to get off Bubble Shower, is to just do it in somebody's face while they're using an Ash of War, because the Hyper Armor is quite strong. So moving on, we have a player that's running a Gug's Greatsword, and we'll go ahead and just kind of start off a little patient, try to see what they're going to do. They've got the buff to make it Magic Greased, and we're going to try to chill a little bit, just reaction roll what they've got coming our way. They go for Chilling Mist, which we do manage to reaction roll. We were trying to set up a backstab there, but didn't quite work out. And again, we need to be kind of patient. We're trying to bait some attacks, and then if we can, get the punish, but because they have massive hyper armor, we do need to be worried about that. So we get off 2 hits, we get the Catch Flame in as well, and they're fairly low on health. We're gonna go ahead and swap our talismans over for the successive attack setup, which I think is definitely a good option. We do manage to get in 2 quick hits. We go for the third with Catch Flame. It doesn't connect, but they are pretty low on health, and now they have swapped over to the Halberd. And here we go for a random Bubble Shower, again hitting a player with the Who Does That, and get a little bit of damage, like, you know, 150. We go for Bubble Shower again, which at this point is just plain stupid, but we're having fun. Throw out the Pest Threads, getting a little bit of damage, and then managing to finish them off with the Great Horn. So borderline BG plays on my part, but we were just having a good time and kind of cycling through our incantations and having a good time with our Ash of War. So next up we have a player running Power Stance Nagakibas. Again, just a very strong setup. You can really Vortex hard with that. Here I'm trying to bait a roll with Pest Threads. It's not a good incantation, but it is a fun one and can just incorporate some level of variety. We're hoping to get Stone of Garang off and get some element of a true combo going, but we are interrupted before that's possible, and they go for a number of crouching attacks. You really need to watch out for those. They do so much damage. They miss the first one, but they do get off the second one, so the health deficit is a little bit closer. Again, we're going for Pest Threads just to get that sweet 37 damage into the mix, and we pull out Stone of Garang, again trying to get the true combo, and here we throw it at the ground. They walk into the lingering hitbox, and we do get the finish. So that one I was super happy with. That was a very fun duel, and I felt like I got to use the variety of my build in a less cheesy way. So next up we have a single lance player, a very Chad move in this day and age. We set up a nice roll catch with the jumping attack, anticipating that they are going to roll, anticipating that we're going to go for a backstab. So kind of a good read when you're able to roll in and make it look like you're setting up a backstab, but then get the roll catch with the jumping attack. So that was kind of the idea there, and it ended up working out. And then we do manage to get the Catch Flame and follow it up with the Envoy Longhorn. So I just feel like the Envoy Longhorn is really pretty good in duels. It's a very strong Great Hammer. It does a lot of damage. The Ash of War is pretty much garbage, but sometimes you can make it work. But I just had so much fun with it. So this player is going to be running something with poison, so we go ahead and swap over to the Mushroom Hat, and then manage to get a nice roll in backstab, and then again hit him with the Who Does That. Go for that Ash of War as a wake up, tank most of their damage because the damage negation is pretty high when you're in that hyper armor, and move on. So now we have a player kind of an odd setup. They go for Spinning Slash. We're able to get the Stone of Gronk thrown directly into the ground, Lingering Hitbox, followed up with a couple quick hits with the Envoy Longhorn, and they're dead before I can finish describing what's going on in the duel. So always a good setup there. And lastly, we've got a player with Pike and a Great Shield. My timing for my rolls was not amazing for this, but we ended up getting the job done. If you're still here, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this full video. If you do like this format of video where it's less invasion focused and more like multiple build focuses with duels and stuff, please definitely let me know in the comments. I really would like feedback on this. Obviously the algorithm will kind of let me know how much people like it, but it's always good to just hear from people that, you know, watch my content in full form. So yeah, I definitely really appreciate everybody's support. I apologize for the hiatus. I was a little bit burnt out on Elden Ring. Played a little bit of the finals just to scratch the first-person shooter itch, but I am back and excited for the DLC to drop. So yeah, thanks again, and I hope you have a great day.